too.
I did see that in the corner. I'm like, oh, maybe she's trying something new. Like, who am I to ask where it's
just a space cadet this morning because school has started, as we were just talking about behind the scenes.
Yes.
Yeah.
School is in session for, I think, the whole country now, I would imagine, because I know that like the South starts sooner than we do in the North, or even like the West Coast seems to start earlier. So
yeah, I've got friends who've had their kids in school for like 3 weeks now, and I'm like, why are we so delayed over here?
Yeah. But also, like, it's Labor Day on Monday. Like, why are they not starting after Labor Day? You know,
yeah, I feel like you either should start early enough in August that Labor Day feels like an actual break, like in the beginning of the year, or you wait.
Yeah. I've never understood. My child is a high school senior, and even in all of these years in the school system, I still don't understand how they come up with their schedules. It's not for me to know. I just get the schedule and I put it in my calendar. That's all I need.
Yep. I hear you. Well, okay. We're streaming to the right places now. Amazing. That's all set, taken care of. So here we are for another episode of Unscripted.
Indeed. And we're living to our reputation in this moment. Exactly.
We certainly are. We certainly are. And if anybody can hear a small little engine going in the background, it's because the cat is directly underneath the webcam and microphone.
That is amazing.
So,
well, I love to see the sassy pants walking like down the hallway, because that's usually what happens at some point. Very elegant doing the catwalk.
Saunters in. Yeah, she beat the camera this time. It was like she knew. She was like, I'm going to get comfortable before they go live. Yeah. And then I'm just going to purr through the entire thing.
And I'm sure at some point she will make an appearance, because she does.
She often does. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So, Jen, we're talking today about writing a strong manuscript.
We are. Yeah.
What did we talk about last month? I want to tie things together here, because that's
last month we were talking about when is the right time, like what are the key milestones in writing and publishing, and like when's the right time to kind of know when to publish your book.
All right, sweet. All right, so folks, we're jumping in now. Mm-hmm. So I think last time we talked about like the book life cycle, right? Mm-hmm. And all the different pieces of that. So today, there she goes. She's on the move. Today we're digging in with manuscript development specifically, right? Which is kind of in the middle of the whole thing, right? You've got conceiving and outlining and conceptualizing kind of at the beginning. You've got publishing on the end. So today we're like smack dab in the middle, really talking about developing a manuscript as well as possible so that it's quality, it's professional, it's in integrity with you, it's aligned, all those things. And if you're here with us live, please drop us a note so we can see that you're here. And if you've got questions, drop those too as we get going. Jen, how do we want to kick off?
Great question. Because I feel like, maybe we could define what a strong manuscript is. Yeah. Because I was talking to a new author of ours this morning, and he was asking for some feedback on the 2 chapters he had sent me. And I don't always look at everything in detail, because I do have my team that kind of is the one that's like assessing things and needs. And I was like, wow, this feels very complete. Like I couldn't quite find the right word for what I was trying to say. But like when I was looking at it, it felt very polished and very well thought through. And the framework was really clear. And I find that I'm not often in that position. I feel like most of the time when I'm getting something, it is the very, very rough, first messy, shitty draft that I'm kind of seeing. Because people just don't know. And I think that's why they're looking for people like yourself or me or my team or your team who can kind of like really help them see like what does a strong manuscript look like. So I like that we're actually talking about this now, because I feel like it will be a good resource for a lot of people.
Yeah. And actually what I want to do is I want to kind of like take a step back before we even dive into like how do we define it, and just talk about where each of us, because we're in different parts on this journey, where each of us would want to be seeing a manuscript, right? Because they're different for you versus I. So for me as like a book coach, right, I like to get people in the beginning. I like to get people before they've even really dug in very far with the manuscript to try to help them correct errors before they just make a lot of them, and then send somebody like you, Jen, a really shitty first or second draft that you then inevitably have to pass back to them and go, no. this is not ready yet, right? So I like the manuscript in either blank state, meaning nothing's even happened yet, but authors like are ready to write a book and they know that they want to work with somebody. Or I want those early shitty drafts. Like I want to get into the mud with you and wrestle around with what's on the page and figure out how to make it make sense and how to make it beautiful and polished and get it to the place where you would want to receive it.
Yes. I love nothing more than working with people that you have worked with first. Because it makes a very big difference when someone was strategically guiding an author, kind of like how to avoid some of those common pitfalls. And for me, like someone can submit that really kind of shitty, rough first draft. Like it's okay. It just requires more editing. And so for the way that we operate as a publisher, which not all publishers do, is that we do developmental editing, and not everyone does. And so I'm able to kind of identify when someone sends a manuscript in, okay, can this go to copy editing, or does this need some developmental work beforehand? And then it kind of just, opens up different paths for folks. But ideally, coming to the publisher when you have something that is well thought through, maybe you worked with an editor already, and you're ready to take action and get it out into the world. The more prep work you do working with people like you, Allie, the easier it is for the rest of the process. So it's like one of those things that like the more prep in the beginning, there's a direct and immediate benefit on the other side of the process, which I feel like not everything kind of lands that way, but in publishing, it absolutely works that way.
Yeah. And so for me, that's like my catchphrase is always strong foundation, strong finish. Like, and I believe in that so very much. I was talking with a new potential client earlier in the week, and this was more of a ghostwriting instance, but she had a bad experience with the prior ghostwriter. And I said, well, what do you have to work with? And she was like, well, not a lot. And I was like, actually, that's better. Because sometimes when you make too many mistakes going into a manuscript, it actually means rewriting versus editing. And they're two very different skill sets. Rewriting is like you're scrapping it and you're starting over. Editing is like, no, there's like some really good bones here that we can work with and we can kind of like tailor and massage. So for me, like when somebody comes in with those early drafts, it's easy for me to say like, oh yeah, there's something here. Like, let's get this polished up. Let's revise this. Let's edit this. Or to say, actually, we need to go back to the beginning. Like, let's just put a pin in that and start over.
Yeah.
So, you don't want to be getting all the way to like handing something over to a publisher, I think, and then having the publisher being like, actually, I recommend that you begin again.
Yeah. And we have 2 active authors that are in that process right now, where we kind of really had to go back to the drawing board. And it's just unfortunate because then it delays everything. And it's also exhausting because, putting a draft together, whether it's well written, well researched, well planned, even if none of that is true, it's still exhausting and still a lot of work and effort to put what you're capable of being your best on the page. So then to have to go back because professionals told you it's not good enough, like just, it's got to be like depleting from an emotional standpoint. But then also like, I think this is where sometimes people are like, you know what, it's not worth it. I'm not even gonna do this anymore. And like, I feel like that's the last thing that you and I in particular want to have happen is these really awesome stories just never get told because it's just too much work.
Right. That also brings up something interesting though. Or at least for me, this is the way my brain works. People will be like, how did she get there? But like, you don't, in my opinion, you don't want the first person to be looking at your manuscript to be the publisher. Like somewhere in this manuscript development, you will have wanted some early readers or beta readers to have taken a look at it and given you some feedback. You don't want surprises, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So you don't want to get to that publisher thinking that you've got the best that you can do and having them being like, nah, right? Like, and you can avoid that by doing certain things along the way while developing your manuscript, right? Which is really why we're here, particularly in today. But before we go into that, I want to remind people that last year, was it last year or earlier this year?
Might have been
a fabulous episode. Must have been last year.
Yeah, on beta readers.
On beta readers.
November of last year.
Highly recommend that people go back and take a look at that one. because that is a part of the process that I always promote when it comes to developing your manuscript.
And if budget's like the constraint, like early readers is the easiest way to get good feedback and not have to have an expense tied to it. So I think that's, obviously it takes a lot longer. It's more to corral and wrangle and things like that. But, if budgetary concerns are there, getting early readers is a fantastic way to get support.
Yeah, because you don't have to pay them. Mm-hmm. And that's all we're going to say about that, because otherwise we'll go down the rabbit hole of talking about beta readers. We already did that. So go watch that episode. Yeah. So where I want to start with like ensuring you write a strong manuscript is I just want to go back to stages of this part of the life cycle, mm-hmm. right? So we're out of outlining, we're out of envisioning, we're out of conceptualizing. We're now in manuscript development. Oh. For me, manuscript development begins with drafting. So it's the very first time words make it to the page. You're following your outline as much as you can. That is a living, breathing document, right? So it's going to evolve as you start to write and you clarify what you're saying or the stories that need to come out or the message that you need to put down on the page. But you're going to draft. And my biggest recommendation here is that you draft all the way through the first draft. And I'll tell you why in a second. So draft all the way through the first draft, and then you're going to stop. You're going to read it. You're going to mark it up with what you think needs to be changed or different. And then you're going to revise it. Okay. So the way that I like to look at it is like a loop. So draft, edit to me as you're reviewing and you're marking it up, what needs to change. And then you're actually doing that work in a revision, right? That gives you a new version. And then you're doing it all again, reading the new version, reading it, marking it up, right? Revising what needs to be changed. And you're doing that as many times as it takes to get to a place where you go, okay, I can't see it anymore. There's nothing more that I can do. I need outside support. All right. That is where one of two things can occur. You can tap a developmental editor to do a manuscript assessment. That's kind of a high level review, allows you to see the the strengths and weaknesses of the manuscript. You could have them do a thorough review and edit, a true developmental edit, where they're reading it cover to cover and they're marking the crap out of it with what needs to change. Right. Or at that point, you could do some beta readers, some early readers, and see what they have to say. And if they're giving you back a lot of feedback, that's a heavy lift, that might indicate you need the outside support of a developmental editor or a book coach. Or it might let you know that there's a few tweaks and you're capable of doing them yourself. And you can take your chances with putting it in front of a publisher and seeing if they think that it's prime time. But here's what I want to just say first is you'll notice that I didn't tell you how many times that you go through draft, edit, revise. Yeah. Okay? Some people can do this in like 3 cycles or like 3 total drafts and get where they need to go. Other people, it's 7. Some it's even more than that. Yeah. For some people, they can get their book done in a year, their manuscript done in a year. For others, it's 4. Right? Like it ranges, and it ranges because of a number of things. The other thing that I want to say is that you can start working with a coach or editor right out of the gate. You don't have to wait till you get through, the first couple of drafts or get to the point where you're like, okay, I've done all that I can do with it. There's nothing more that I can do. Everybody kind of takes that road differently as well, choosing who they work with and when. The moral of this story is basically to ensure that you write a strong manuscript, you take your time doing it, right? And you give it all you've got before it goes any further. Yeah. And we can talk defining characteristics and qualities here in a second, but Jen, anything to add to that?
I agree with everything that you just said. I feel like you outlined it very clearly. I'm like in my mind, I'm thinking of like a couple of authors that I'm waiting for manuscripts on. And, sometimes they'll send something and I'm like, did you read this? Did you at all go from start to finish and just kind of see, is this my best foot forward? Because I'll just kick it back to them to say hey, love where you're going with this. I think you need some more refinement, this, and this. Let's put a calendar, let's put a date on the calendar and then circle back with me in 30 days and we'll see how much better it's gotten. Because I don't know, because I am the publisher, I don't really know how I would do this if I weren't. Whereas I don't know that I would want to be putting a half-assed foot forward, I guess. in terms of submitting something that's really rough and a mess to someone like yourself. That is your job to make it not messy. Whereas like that is like in our case, again, with our model, it is also our job to make it not messy. But a lot of publishers don't touch any of that. So I don't know. I'm just thinking about like your brand, your ego, all of the emotional aspects of this. Like, would you really want to be giving something to someone who's going to be critical? Like, it's their job to be critical. Like, do you want to like put yourself in that position, or do you want to slow down and take your time and do it right, as you were just outlining?
Yeah. Yeah. And what you all want is to do it slow and do it right. You know, I think to your point, Jen, like, yeah, think about your brand, think about your reputation, think about your legacy, think about the fact that this is supposed to be either your thought leadership and expertise, right? Because we're really in the nonfiction space, right? Or it's your story, the story that you're already feeling really vulnerable about sharing, right? So if you're already feeling really vulnerable about sharing, like memoir is a great example, right? So I'm using a lot of right. Sorry, I'm trying to get to my point here. A lot of people who write memoir get really nervous about judgment. They get nervous about how other people are going to perceive them because of the thing that they've shared, the thing that they've been through, how they wrote about somebody, how they wrote about themselves, how they wrote about an experience. And quite honestly, the best defense to all those things is a great offense. And I hate using sport analogies because I'm not a sports person per se. I'm not even sure if that made sense, but I think it does. Basically, the best way to avoid truly having judgment from others in a lot of these things is to have done your due diligence to craft a really great story where you are a three-dimensional character. Everybody else is a three-dimensional character. You're objective, you're honest, right? And so if you're worried about some of those things, then to me, that's always a signal you haven't done enough yet, right? And similarly, we could flip this. If we look at prescriptive nonfiction or thought leadership, it's a book about being a better leader. It's a book about being a better communicator, whatever it is, right? If you're still asking yourself, will they read this and doubt me? Doubt what I know? Doubt that I've been clear in explaining that I do know what I'm talking about? Yeah, there's a little bit that's going to be that, just like that normal imposter syndrome that bites us all. But a lot of the time, it might be a signal you haven't done enough in the manuscript. Yeah. Something's wrong with your tone. Something's wrong with your voice. Something's wrong with your argument. There's not enough evidence. That anecdote didn't make sense. You didn't have a good enough example to illustrate that you really do know what you're talking about, right? So you need to ensure that you have a strong manuscript, not just so the book makes sense and the book looks professional and it's of good quality, but also to protect you.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
The end. Mic drop. That's all we have for you today, folks.
Done. 18 minutes. We're out.
Peace. We'll be here next time.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to just pretend that I know nothing, and I'm just going to I'm going to rewind us a second and say, what if I'm an author and I'm listening to this and I'm listening to us being two talking heads saying, like, you have to do this, like, do it this way, build a strong foundation, blah, blah, blah. But what if I just don't have the skill from a writing standpoint, or even just the capacity to understand how to do this? Like, what does someone do in that position?
All right. Well, to me, the skill and capacity, two very separate buckets. And somebody could have both of those issues. So let's just like divide and like break them down here. Skill could be a number of things. And all of these scenarios I'm about to share are real scenarios. I'm not making them up for the purposes of teaching. These are things that like I have seen, from the people that I've worked with. People come to me and go, I don't have the skill. And I'll go, tell me about that. And then what they will do is they will tell me about horror stories of their education where teachers made them feel like they didn't have strong writing skills. So they still, to this day as adults, fear the red pen, think that they can't string a sentence together, think that because they don't know how to creatively write, it means that they don't know how to write at all. And what I mean about that is, like, I've had authors say, well, I don't know how to write dialogue. to make this seem believable. And I'm like, well, no shit. They don't teach writing dialogue as a part of your normal English classes, right? Well, not knowing how to do a specific type of writing doesn't mean that you're a bad writer. It means that you haven't learned that particular thing in the world of writing, right? So I encourage people to really ask themselves, what is it about them that they believe doesn't make them a strong writer? You know, is it they've got some horror story from the past and they're still carrying that around? Is it that there's one aspect of writing that they don't know how to do, and that's like the block or barrier, because likely you can learn how to do it? Is it that you don't, some people are like, I'm not a good writer because I don't really understand where to put a comma. And I'm like, me neither, sister. Like, I'm still screwing that up. I am a comma. I was going to say something maybe a little bit crude, but we won't. I'll reel it back. I use commas too much. That's what I'm going to say.
That is also my style.
Oh my God. Use commas too much. And then when I think I'm using a comma too much, let's throw in a dash. Like
an M dash.
An M dash. Exactly. M dash. We love our M dashes around here. So does that make me also a bad writer? I freaking hope not, because this is the field that I'm in, right?
Yeah.
There's a difference between understanding every single rule of grammar and punctuation and being a good or a bad writer. Meaning it's not all about that one itty bitty little thing. And that's why we have copy editors, mechanical editors, line editors. Those are the people who know those rules of the road and are making sure that you follow them, right? But these are not reasons to like hold yourself back from attempting. Now, if it's all of those things, you're like, well, no, really, I'm a bad writer. Like, I have a really hard time articulating my point in a full sentence. I only ever write in fragments. I don't understand a paragraph. Okay. If we're really blowing this whole thing out of the water and it's like, no, it's all of those things and more. All right. Then I would suggest that you work either with a coach, if you really want to write it yourself and learn how to become the writer, or you work with a ghostwriter and you give all the material that you can to them in whatever form that takes. And then they string the words together on your behalf.
Yep.
Things to add to skill, Jen?
My mind went to resources as you like when you're talking about ghostwriters. Like my mind went to resources to think like, okay, now what? Like I'm like poking holes in all of our stuff. Like now what, right? I'm like, okay, I'm not a terrible writer, but I actually identified that I think I do need some maybe ghostwriting support, or maybe I don't think I'm a terrible writer, and then others tell me otherwise. Yeah. Ghostwriting, as we know, in coaching, like it requires resources, right? And so is there something that we could advise someone who's like really needs that extra help, but may not have the resources to get it? Like, what would we tell that person? Just keep on going and do your best and hopefully it resolves itself? Or is there some strategy here?
Okay. When you say, so they don't have those resources, meaning they don't know where to find the coach or ghostwriter, or they can't afford the coach or ghostwriter?
I'm thinking more the latter.
Okay. So this is where you use the hell out of whatever free resources you can find, like that you can Google the crap out of, right? So there are plenty of people in the industry who have blogs and videos such as this one, right, that educate and inform on a variety of different things within writing and publishing. And that includes writing skills, like, how to write dialogue, how to outline your book. So free workshops, webinars, classes, or webinars, workshops, classes that are like $20, right? I offer an occasional creative writing workshop. Today I'm doing scene development for fiction writers and memoir writers, right? Earlier in the year, I did plotting your memoir along the story arc. They were $25, right? But Udemy, like I was interested recently in like what's the formula of a psych thriller? I've been feeling like getting back into some fiction, and I love to binge psych thrillers.
Yeah.
So I'll go check out Udemy. So bought a couple classes, right? I spent less than $50 and they were having a sale, right?
Yeah.
So even I'm going and looking outside of myself and like what I know to go and get educated in other arenas.
Yeah.
There are blog posters, infographics, YouTube videos galore, right? There's no shortage of content.
No, there's
The
not.
biggest thing with going after the free stuff or the low offer stuff, the low cost stuff, is just you want to make sure that these are legit people. So don't just, Google something and go with the top result and go ahead and pay for it and assume that you're getting the best of the best. Spend a little bit of time. Like if you can't spend a lot of money, then put your investment in time to ensure that the people that you're going to choose to learn from for low cost or for free at least know what they're talking about, so that you're not developing really bad habits or further like developing skills that you already think are bad or insufficient.
Yeah. I love that advice completely because yes, if you don't have the monetary resources, putting some time investment in, because and I love that you are using that platform to go find psych thriller resources, because we don't all know. And actually, I've been percolating on maybe trying to write something that's fiction, which has literally never been of interest whatsoever in my brain ever. And because I'm now finishing up my 8th book, and I'm like, I haven't done fiction before, but I have absolutely, I am starting at 0 in terms of understanding how fiction works. So what I would do is go start to look for those resources too. So, I feel like just because you might be an expert in one thing does not mean that necessarily translates into other areas. So, look it up, go find information.
Yeah.
Oh, Bossy's here. What is she saying? Thank you for sharing these tips. Yes. Okay. Look at her promoting PYP's writing circle. So yeah, we have a writing circle, low cost way for people to just have that support system and accountability, just in a weekly setting, because sometimes that's all we need is to just have a place to show up, even, which could be in a paid format. It could be a free group at your local library, right? There's so many different, especially with writing, it feels like there's so many resources of every variety, every income level, everything. Yeah. So, do your homework,
check Eventbrite and Meetup, turn on your notifications and when you're setting up your profiles in there, and asks you what are you interested in? So we can show you the events that are coming up in that area. Choose writing and publishing. Look in your state or your community to see if there's a writing organization or writing group. Here in Vermont, we have the League of Vermont Writers, and you don't have to be a Vermonter to join it. I mean, you will probably miss out on the in-person gatherings, but we also do some stuff virtually. Membership for the year, it's less than $50 at this point, right? So there are lots of resources out there to educate, inform, help develop those skills. If that's where you're at, it might be a slower road, but you might also feel a lot of pride in having developed those skills to do this yourself.
And sometimes a slower road is okay, right? You don't have to sometimes we're operating on timelines that are just unrealistic, given where we're starting. It's almost like if I were to try to start a new career tomorrow and suddenly want to be an expert at it in 6 months, that takes time. I don't remember when you started out in this field, but I wrote my first book. I published my first book in 2013. So it's now been over a decade, and I've been helping, hundreds of authors since, but that takes time to acquire those skills. You can learn a lot, but until you're actually in the trenches and doing the thing, that's where the real learning comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it doesn't even matter if you've already had a taste of that world. I got my Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing in 2010. My first book, Dear Universe, came out in 2020. I knew a lot about writing. I knew some stuff about traditional publishing, but I didn't do traditional publishing for Dear Universe. So all of a sudden I was a fish out of water trying to figure out, how do I do this thing some other way when I've never been taught that? We didn't study that form of publishing in my master's program, right? It wasn't the form of publishing that, the League of Vermont Writers at the time that I was in the organization was teaching. So I had no idea, right? And it was and here I was thinking I should know how to do this because blah, blah, blah. No, none of us know how to do anything if it's the first time we've ever done it, right? So I love it. I love that you said be mindful of where you're at, right? And that also brings up the point of quit comparing yourself. Not you, Jen, but you, listener, quit comparing yourself, right? It's not fair for you to compare yourself to Jen, for example, with 8 books, right? If you're just getting started, she's 10 years out on her journey than you. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. So you looking around at your peers, they already have the books or whatever it is, well, good for them. Celebrate them, They did it. It made sense for them when they did it. You need to now figure out when it makes sense for you. And that actually is a really great segue into capacity.
Yes.
So Jen, when you said maybe they don't have the capacity, what were you thinking specifically?
I think capacity can be defined in like a number of ways. There's like a time capacity, but I was thinking more, and this is going to sound like terrible using the word intellectual, but like kind of like the brain power capacity. Like it might be someone who just doesn't have the capacity to maybe synthesize the information in a way that can then be presented to someone else. And I think this is where experts come in to be able to say, okay, what do we need to do to get it out of your head? Because they might be absolutely brilliant at what they do, but they just don't have the skill set to translate that into the written word.
Yeah. That's usually true, especially for people with really long careers. So I find that my authors who come to me that have like 20 years-ish of experience have a very difficult time paring down and making their material digestible. Just too much information, right? And they have a really difficult time understanding what should I choose, excuse me, what should I choose to go into this manuscript when I have 20 plus years of knowledge that I want to impart on my reader?
A lot of information.
Right. And so it's like information overwhelm. And then if they try to get that all into the manuscript, they end up with what one author termed infobese. Their manuscript becomes infobese.
I love that.
Yeah, too much information, right? And then you can't digest it as a reader and understand what's actually happening because there's too much there. Yeah. So definitely the outside forces can help with drilling things down. And sometimes, again, if it's a cost thing and you can't afford a coach or ghostwriter for the long term, you could try a paid consultation, right? That's something that I offer. It's like 60 minutes. We pick one thing and we zero in, right? Far more affordable and gets you building up momentum again. So you're not stuck in that one issue. I'm not the only one who does that. So it could be a one-time consultation, shorter time, shorter amount of money. It could be other colleagues in your field, right? Who are supportive of you writing a book, think that you have kind of an interesting way of teaching the material and helping you to filter like what should go in and what goes out.
Yeah.
Right. And there's lots of different methods as well to help you organize your thought. If it happens to be like, I've got too much information and all that information is making my cognitive ability to decide like diminished capacity to do so.
Yeah.
Other capacity would be time. Like you're busy business owner, entrepreneur, working full time, you're in management, whatever, right? And then you've got kids at home, you're caretaking for an elderly parent, you decided to start a nonprofit. I mean, who knows, right? Like our lives are a myriad of hats that we wear. So how do you tackle it then, right? You could hire somebody to take care of it for you, but the caveat there is it's not a hands-off process. No. It's not like you have one call and then they go away and they write your book through osmosis.
People believe that though. Like, where do you think that myth comes from?
I don't know.
Because it's not how it's shown in like movies, right? Like, because in movies, it's like the novelist is in a cabin isolated for 6 months and finds love and romance and, foibles. But, like, where does it come from? Because I think people just want to just magically be like, oh, I'm going to spend $50,000 on a ghostwriter. Great. And now I don't have to do anything. When the reality is you still have to do a ton of work. So, yeah.
Yeah. So know what you're getting into if that's the route that you go.
Yeah.
It will mean that they're doing the crux of the writing, but like they can't just write something they don't know about. So expect interviews, expect to share documentation or content, expect to answer questions, and expect to review the material once it's been written. Because at the end of the day, your book, baby, and you got to stand by it and understand what's in it and that it's appropriate, like to what you would stand behind, right? So it's an option if you've got the financial, investment to be able to do that, but it's not like it's saving you all the time ever.
Yeah.
Like it's a fraction. It's saving you a fraction of the time.
Yeah.
If you don't have the financial capacity to pay for somebody to do it for you, then this is, I think, going back to what we were just talking about, which is slow and steady wins the race. Like, there's no need to rush. But if you are on a deadline, because you've got something coming up where you want it done by a certain date for whatever reason, then you need to think about how you're going to move some things around in your life to prioritize getting this done.
Yeah. 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 And, I want to go back to what you were saying about like the 20-year seasoned professional who just doesn't know where to kind of start. In June, we were talking about how to cultivate and nurture an audience. And I think that that's like a really good example where knowing who you're writing for can help make a lot of these things, specifically in terms of what content do I include versus what content don't I include. When we know with clarity who we're writing for, I think that immediately helps. But I think a lot of these other things helps. Having that who that target reader is in mind also helps along the way too, in terms of identifying the right resources, because then we can kind of like the scope of the work feels much more manageable. Because instead of saying like, oh, I'm going to write a book about change management, like that's great, but that could literally be, that could be like a series of books. That could be dozens of books. It could be hundreds of books. Or we can say, I'm writing a book about change management for this specific industry, for people with this specific level of experience who've been, at it with this degree. Like you can go real deep and narrow. So I just wanted to reference back to that June episode for anybody who maybe like, I don't fully even know who I'm writing for. Like we really dug deep into it in that episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're looking for then, right? So strong manuscript, you want it to be the best of your best writing, right? You want it to be the best of your best argument if you're writing prescriptive nonfiction. So an argument that is clear and explicit, identifies some sort of promise or transformation, what the reader is going to get by the time they're done reading the book. It should be well organized. It should be detailed enough that your promise wins out in the end, or the argument that you're making is proven out to be true. So you don't want holes or gaps in what you're trying to say. You want it to be a relatively contained document, meaning you should know what the average word counts are for your genre. And while you don't need to be right on the dot, like if most prescriptive nonfiction books right now are somewhere between 45 and 60,000 words, you probably don't want your manuscript to be 80, right? So look at the whole document and go, okay, like, is this way too big for a reader to be able to digest it, right? Which means digestibility is also a part of a strong manuscript. Can somebody read it and know exactly what you were saying and be able to go and tell a friend that they just read a book and tell them what the book was about, right? Pretty good indicator if the writing is strong. Because if somebody goes and goes, man, I just read this book and I have no idea, I spent 400 pages with it, which would be a sign that it was too long. But I spent 400 pages with it and I still don't know what they were trying to get at. That's bad. You don't want that. That is not a strong manuscript.
Yeah. This is also an opportunity for your voice and your tone to match. Because I think I say this at least once a week where I'm talking to somebody and it's like, if you are a conversational speaker, your book needs to feel conversational. If you are a more polished, maybe more academic style speaker, your book should also feel the same way. And so, because we don't want to have that disconnect for the reader to say, oh, I was, watching Unscripted with Allie and Jen. They're both so like relatable and personable. And then they read either of our books and they're super stodgy and like stiff and, still packed with content that we would have written. But if there's like that stiffness to it and neither of us are stiff people, there's going to be that disconnect to be like, oh, like what happened here? And we don't want any reader ever asking that question.
Right. Voice and tone is definitely a big, important piece. What other things with strong manuscript? Well, in the prescriptive nonfiction world, right? Like, we want it to be mostly your perspective, but actually your manuscript is also going to be stronger if you're giving a little credit to the people who have informed or influenced your perspective and your opinion, right? So citing other resources, referencing other folks that have lent something to the way that you look at whatever it is that you're teaching. also is a sign of a strong manuscript. You don't want to overdo it because you don't want to risk not looking like you have, you know, an original idea. You don't want to risk looking like you're just plagiarizing a bunch of other sources and putting them together into one manuscript. But if you're just talking and it's only your voice and it's like ignoring all the other voices in the field or in this space beyond you, then that's not as strong as it could be.
Yeah, I would completely agree. You know, I'm going to take us to another level from a strategy standpoint, because if we when we're talking about strong manuscripts right now, what we're primarily discussing is like strong writing, strong development, strong cohesion among things. But the other element to this is strategy and really thinking about, is this manuscript serving your greater purpose? And that could be that you are using your manuscript to get more keynote speaking. It could be that you are using it to launch some bigger institution. It could be any number of different things. And really looking at the manuscript from a true strategic lens to say, is this actually serving that greater purpose? Is a really, really important aspect of this process that typically can't even really happen until you have a lot of it down on paper. Like a lot of times this happens, I find, a little bit more in kind of even like the copy editing phase, where it's like, all right, let's start to like really look at what's here. Like what else can I add to make it clear and obvious that I am the expert and I have this whole ecosystem behind me of ways in which you can engage, and making sure that the book leaves the breadcrumbs and brings the reader to you out of the book.
Yep. So I think what you're saying then, Jen, is like a strong manuscript has a clearly defined authoritative voice, right? That's the author profile. A identifiable kind of like connection point or funnel that brings people back to the author themselves, and a defined market, defined audience, right? Which should be evident in the writing and the organization of the manuscript. And so these things are hanging together, right? And if you don't have one, right, then the other one's going to feel a little bit lost.
Or out of place. And then the reader's going to be like, oh, that's weird. Like, why is that there? And it needs to be like that cohesion to just be like an obvious next step of like, oh, I read Allie's book. Like, obviously I need to go to her website. Like, it needs to be like that, more like, why wouldn't I do that versus like, why is that here?
Yeah. And some people need to help to connect the dots. So one author came to me, just wanted help looking at a proposal that she's put together because she's trying to find a smaller, more traditional press, not one that requires an agent, but she doesn't want to do the hybrid independent route. Great. So we took a look at the proposal together, and a lot of it was really, really great, except I couldn't figure out why the publisher, because I was putting myself in their shoes to look at this manuscript, and I was thinking, why would the publisher believe that this author has the authority to write this particular book? Because so far, what was included in the proposal didn't connect the dots as to how her experience in this other field and doing this other thing lent itself to everything that she was proposing she was going to talk about in this manuscript. Right? Yeah. And I think this is a good illustration of what you're talking about.
100%.
Right? It wasn't that it wasn't real. It wasn't that it wasn't true that she had the right authority, but it wasn't presented yet. Right? And so the publisher was going to look at this proposal and have to kind of like filter through and ask themselves these questions as to like, well, why is she the person to write this particular book? What am I missing? So these things need to be clearly connected. And that also means, though, when she gets to writing the manuscript itself, she needs to be able to identify in there for the reader why she's the authority on this. Or even the reader is going to go, I don't get it. Like, she's got a background in manufacturing. Why is she teaching me how to transform my life? Right? Doesn't mean that she can't.
Yeah.
But readers are speculative. That's why they're reading, right? So they're going to want to know, well, how do these things connect? So, strategy really should inform the writing. And if you don't have the strategy, chances are parts of the writing are going to feel like they're waffling around.
Yeah. And that's the thing that we focus so much of our time and energy on, is like really thinking about that strategy, from the writing to the publishing to the marketing, to like just really make sure that it's clear, it's cohesive, it's concise, and it's obvious. Because ultimately, like, no one's writing well, maybe that's not true. Most people aren't writing a nonfiction book just for the hell of it. Like, there's some bigger motive behind it, whether it's positioning yourself in a place of authority, whether it's to leave your legacy of all of this work that you've previously done, whatever the case is, we still want it to be obvious for the reader how they're going to respect what's being said, really from that authority standpoint, to be like, oh yeah, this person really knows their stuff. We had an author forever ago who was in automotive and was writing a book about the law of attraction. And the two things on the surface do not make sense when you hear them like that. But they were able to weave the story in to show the clear transition of what they went through from doing this particular line of work to doing this. And so very easily position themselves as an authority, because it's all in how it's positioned and it's messaged. And I think sometimes I think authors get hung up on visibility, positioning, messaging, because all of that just feels like too exposing. Whereas like writing, it's like, oh, I'm over here writing. I'm by myself. I'm doing my own thing. You know, I'm working with Allie. We're over here. No one needs to see it. But then it's like, oh shoot, like now I actually have to like expose myself. Like people actually have to read what it is that I think. And I think that is a terrifying experience for most authors, especially first-time authors.
Yeah. But the book eventually is a product, the product that's going to sit somewhere to be purchased by someone, right? Your reader. So the manuscript has got to make this move. I call it transcendence. It has to transcend from about you to about them. And about you could be in a variety of different things, either about you trying to stay hidden, or about you in terms of why you decided to write it, or about you in terms of your personal story. Somewhere along the way, it has to come outside of yourself to connect with the person on the other side. So it's never going to be enough for you to be like, well, I don't really want like anybody to look at me. Well, then don't write a book. Because you can't have them both. Like have nobody look at you and write a book. Maybe you could do it under a pen name, and then that would give you like a screen of anonymity. But like, you know, and you can't write a book and have it be so me that the reader never understands why they're reading it.
Yeah.
Right. And what's in it for them.
So,
yeah. Totally.
There's so much here. I feel like we could have like hours and hours and days of discussions around like anything that we talk about, and we're confined to less than an hour. So, you know, but we do it. We get through.
We do it. I mean, we just did 52 minutes on, you know, how to ensure a strong manuscript. And I know that there's things that we've forgotten and we've overlooked, but, you know, I think the other thing that people should consider, and it always kills me when I talk to people and they're like, well, I don't really read. And I'm like, but you're going to write a book. Like, it just tickles me, because it's like, how will you then judge where your book lands? Right? Because those of us who read, we know a good book from a bad book. Even if we can't articulate why one was better than the other, there's like some sort of like subconscious knowing, right? When you read a book and you're like, yeah, that was good, right? But if you don't have that knowledge, you've got no barometer.
It's a lot harder.
Right? A lot harder, because now you're relying on the people around you to tell you if it's good or not. And if you're not surrounding yourself with the people who are going to be honest, and instead are just going to like stroke your ego and blow smoke, then you can end up with a manuscript that you don't know if it's good. And you're trusting somebody else to tell you that it's good, and you're maybe not trusting the right people. So, you know, put yourself in this space, meaning the writing and publishing space. Like if you're not a reader, then become one, even if it's just for the length of time that you're working on a book. Read books like the one you want to write.
Yeah. And pick the top sellers in the category that you're trying to write. It doesn't have to be, you know, from a specific top seller list, but just go to Amazon and say, I'm writing a book about human-centered leadership. Great. Go search it and see what books show up. You know, like look at the top 10 in that category and see if there's, you know, look through them. You know what, this brings up, and this is a whole other rabbit hole, but I'll just ask you, hopefully with brevity, is people who are concerned that if they're reading other people's work while they are writing their own, they're afraid that they're going to unintentionally plagiarize. What would you say to that person?
Well, there's a couple different things here. One, don't read books like the one you're trying to write and write the book at the same time. Make reading books like the one that you want to try to write a part of your envisioning, outlining, strategizing, conceptualizing stage, right? As information gathering. You're collecting data. You're seeing what else is out there, right? Because I do think that it can be hard when you're writing and you've got other voices in your head. However, having a good understanding of the other more recently published books that might be similar to yours, and then whether or not you incorporate them into your writing, that's okay. You can incorporate in as long as you're appropriately citing and referencing, right? Where we get into trouble is if like you're copying whole paragraphs, like you've got the ebook or something and you've managed to figure out how to do that, copy a paragraph, bring it in. You're not putting it in any quotation marks. You're not adding in any referencing or citation information, right? Then that's a problem. That's plagiarizing. But if you're doing it with the intent of being like, it's kind of like my good friend so-and-so says in their book, blah, 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 right? Then you're giving credit where credit's due. And a good publisher who's got that mechanical copy line editor, proofreader, right, on the other end, they're going to spot, like, is this your work or somebody else's work? Especially if all of a sudden it doesn't sound like you, or it's quoting research or studies that you're like, it wasn't my knowledge that that author was a research scientist or had performed any studies, right? Or if you've said so-and-so's book, but then nothing's in quotation marks, then that type of editor is going to be like, hey, it looks like you were trying to reference or cite this other person's work, right? If we're going to do that, this is how we do it the right way, right? And if you don't know how to do that, then all you need to do is highlight a passage and put a comment to yourself, like, you need to figure out how to cite this appropriately, right? Or whatever. I feel like it takes more effort to consciously or unconsciously plagiarize than it would to like consciously do it.
I agree. That's really good advice. Because I think a lot of people struggle with that. And then like just having, like, I always think of the story when I was asking you to write a review for my book. And then you're like, I can only want to read it because I'm working on my own book very similar to it, right? So there's like, because you knew what phase of the process you were in. You weren't in the envisioning stage. You were like straight up in the same phase I was in at that point. So those things do make sense. So.
Yeah. And the last thing that I want to say to people is like, you don't necessarily have to read books cover to cover if you're trying to study them for like ideas or what to do or what not to do or how a book gets put together, right? Flip through them, get a feel for them, look through their table of contents, read a chapter that interests you, see how that chapter is outlined, go to a different chapter, right? Okay, toss that book aside, pick up another book. I'm not saying that you need to spend hours and hours and hours reading all the other books that are like yours. I'm just suggesting like you should at least pick some up and have a sense of what's in them, how they're put together, how they might stand out in the market, what might make them strong, right? Like, how are you going to emulate strength if you don't know what it looks like?
It'll help your book stand out later, because what we're not talking about is the design elements to all of this, right? Like the story is obviously what people are there for, the content, but like how it's laid out, how it's like the headings and subheadings and, how all of that looks too is also hugely important to this. So if you're looking at a book of like, wow, this is a huge seller in this category, and you're like, okay, I see some design elements I might want to replicate, versus like, okay, this book isn't selling at all. Like, what might they be doing wrong, and why? And that's attributing to why they might not be selling. So like, there's a whole bigger package to all of this. We're just focused on manuscript today.
Manuscripts.
Yes.
And next month we're going in a totally different direction.
Completely. It's one of our special focus.
Next month we've got special topic here where we're going to talk about book banning. And we're going. What day are we?
19th.
The 19th. Okay. That's not the one that we changed.
We changed it to the 19th, didn't we? Wait, sorry. We turned 18th. We changed it to the 18th.
We changed it to the 18th. Okay. So you'll see it on LinkedIn. So join us for that very special episode. And before we wrap up, Jen, what do you got going on with Publisher Purpose?
I have my new book is in a pre-order phase, which I'm super excited about. It's called Promote Your Purpose, a strategic guide to book marketing for nonfiction authors who want to grow their impact, influence, and income. I'm super excited to have my little business cards. It won't be out until February, but anyone who pre-orders will get the ebook sometime in the fall. So that way people don't have to wait to be able to kind of take action. So I'm super excited about it. I got a lot of things in motion, and I will hopefully be sharing a cute little visual with you in maybe next month. Maybe.
Awesome. Do you want to drop the pre-order link in the?
Oh, yes. Would love that.
Over here, it's coming up pretty soon. My co-author of Do Not Write a Book Until You Read This One and I are running a free webinar called Before You Write a Single Word. Oh, no, that's not. That's just the tagline on the page. That's not called that. It's called Before the Manuscript, the Hard Truths and Hidden Strategies Every Writer Needs to Know. And so that's happening Wednesday, September 10th at 1 p.m. Eastern, totally free on Zoom. We're bringing the best of the best, basically from Do Not Write a Book direct to you. So go grab a seat over there. We would love to have you.
Per our previous statement earlier, we are bountiful with resources. We have this podcast, LinkedIn Live, whatever this is, for years now, and we'll continue to keep on producing content. And then we both have so many different free entry points for people to just get more information on how to do all of this better. So if anyone has any questions or they want to reach out to either of us, I feel like our contact information is also bountiful and everywhere. But I feel like LinkedIn message, super easy. Go to the website, all those things.
Yeah. Yes. I'm here for some DMs.
Me too.
Slide into the DMs on LinkedIn. Let's talk about some books. And only books, weirdos. Because there have been some weird LinkedIn.
Girl, I could write. I've always dreamed of doing a coffee table book of the most inappropriate things I've been sent on LinkedIn, not other platform, but LinkedIn specifically.
LinkedIn, I know it's weird, but when it happens, you're like, "What? Okay."
You're like, "Is that really your profile picture?" Because
yeah, I've stopped accepting any requests from anybody that I think is using some sort of weird fake avatar thing. Yeah. Anyway, we digress. It's
I'll tell you offline.
We are going to wrap it up here, folks. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.